I think because media houses, they're used to coming up with their own content, putting it out and owning it. It's a competition, which really makes sense. It's the way that we've always done the business. But for impact, we have to put out really high quality, in-depth information across as many media houses in as many countries as possible. So we have started to have different partnerships with media houses that understand the model. And then in the end, when you put out a really good story with a lot of data and multimedia, it's something which is beyond, you know, the normal daily story. Sometimes the journalists get awards, they get recognition, and even the media house is like, oh, we've gotten something through maybe doing something in a different way.
The award comes from Infonile.
Not from us, from maybe national or international players.
After they report a story about you. Mpindi, what are you teaching, what are you training these young people to do? Not to report about environment, not to report about innovations and technology. I don't know, in a nutshell, as we do a wrap up. By the way, the floor is open. I'm coming to you shortly as you put your comments together.
We cover everything that you have said we are not doing. So we do environment reporting, we do climate change reporting. Our fellowship program right now has capacity to cover most of the things, maybe not adequately as you would want it, but it provides like a beginner knowledge that a young journalist can begin to ask themselves, what do I do about business, about environment. The other thing maybe which was part of this topic around media viability, one of the conversations that we're having also at the MCI Media Hub is for innovations that are coming up, how do we ensure that they understand the business? So how we can work with Zofikash. How do they understand like their business models, develop them, and also be able to sustain their ideas? So for us, it's just now beyond training, Sean. It's also young people who are also able to go into entrepreneurship.
What happens at your media hub?
A lot of things. First,
for example,
training.
People can open their phones.
We have a training center. So if you are, now this is Kalango, if you are a media house and you need to do certain trainings, we have space, we have an event space, we have radio and TV studios that can be used not just by young journalists, but anyone who wants to produce content. We have innovator spaces, so we have a lot of space where partners or young innovators can come and use the space. And then, I mean, one of the things now that is super interesting for us is hosting our radio there. So most of the young journalists who want to work and upskill on radio, they are also using the space.
Thank you very much. Joseph, what was that?
Joseph said it's also a hub for new talent.
Oh.
Yes.
You said you have no age restriction.
That's why I said we welcome everyone. I mean, recently we launched a program on media literacy for kids. So we have a curriculum in partnership with DW Academy that empowers kids between 9 to 12 with skills on how to navigate media. So things to do with fact-checking, how media is produced, and even themselves being able to produce content. So that's how we also navigate those ages, and even the dinosaurs.
You've gone there again.
Sort of.
There's some questions. I don't know which direction to.
Briefly, thank you so much, Annika. Thank you so much, Annika, Makins, Abbas Mpindi, and Fatboy, and Paul for your presentation. My question is more on the latter part of what we are discussing today, which is media viability, but also on solutions journalism and constructive journalism. Most of our media models today, including both the traditional, because these are stories that the society needs, and they might not be funded. So how can we promote such stories but still run a media house?
I will say something about that. I'm very passionate about solutions journalism. I'm also a trainer on that. There is a huge connection between solutions journalism and things like audience engagement, as well as as well as raising revenues. And this is how it works. A lot of times, people will focus on problem-centered reporting. The psychology of solutions journalism is what is working in our communities. So let's use an example of Reckless Radio as a solution for online streaming and reaching out to maybe younger audiences. So if you do such a story, someone else might say, oh, that's a public relations story. But if you're able to show the impact of that radio station on its audiences or its communities, and you're able to objectively also show the limitations, it helps to show others how that solution works and it can be replicated. Now, the biggest, I think one of the biggest challenges media houses have been facing is losing trust with audiences, because every time maybe you watch, you see only problem-centered stories. Which is not to say those stories should not be covered, they must be covered, but the world also needs to know what is working on the other side. Now, when it gets to revenue streams, it's really, really easy to collaborate with different organizations that work on those issues. So if you're talking about climate change and SDGs, if you're covering solution stories around climate change, you have a higher chance to work with organizations that work on those issues, and maybe they can put money into those spaces. That helps to create a revenue base that you ideally would not create if you were working mainly on problem-centered reporting, events, which at the end of the day should also be covered. So that would be the connection there.
Anyone to add on that? Okay, we move on to another question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. My experience is that most startups, especially techno startups, never live to celebrate their birthdays. Many of them...
Which one?
Very many, like especially techno.
Fifth birthday or...
First one.
First one, eh?
Yes.
Okay.
Either they give up on the way because they can't fund, the processes, or they get to be bought off by, by big institutions, and then, through either acquisition or something of the sort. What strategy do you guys have to remain relevant, to also be, sustainable, especially if you're discussing about online radio, which is a bit of a new trend in Uganda? And then I'm from the background of community radio, where we also want to join the bandwagon of digitalization. But our audience is still not embracing it because of the network penetration, or even just not being able to afford the gadgets that they can use for communicating with the digital platforms. What's the plan to support such platforms, especially rural-based platforms, but while responding to the pressures for every other media house to get online as well?
I want to say that, first of all, for startups, I think the principles of management and running a startup stay the same as running any other company. So if you are coming into the space, you need to make sure that you respect those disciplines and principles that are there. Once you have that DNA, you could have your creativity here and there, but once you master those, then issues to do with fundraising, generating revenues will come easy. I don't know, Sai, if you have...
Yeah, he's right. Essentially, media, it's like any business. That is if you're doing it commercially. If you're going to start it, you first have to assess your market. Is there a demand for it? Or if there isn't, is there a way to create it? And what will it take? So you kind of have to do your homework of what will be required to set up your operation, if it can be sustained by the market, both from the audience side and the client side. And then after that, well, you could talk to investors, you could talk to family members, you could talk to friends, you can talk to partners, from that point, I think once you have the idea and the solid plan, I actually think that's the hardest part. Once you have that, and now you're taking these ideas to people, I think you will find someone that would be interested to hear your idea. And if it seems viable, they might even be interested in partnering with you. Of course, you have to be careful. Someone can take your idea and steal it and do all that kind of stuff. But if you've done your homework and you've float the idea around to people with money, with influence, with connections, you could have doors open for you. So I'd invite you to explore that.
Well, thank you very much. As we still go through our interaction session, we are active on all social media platforms. Please look out for our different hashtags. At Uganda Media Week 21, look out for beg your pardon, hashtag Media Week 21, hashtag Media Matters UG. That's on Twitter at MFA Uganda, on Facebook, Media Focus on Africa, Media Focus on Africa on YouTube. YouTube is also streaming live. And if you need Wi-Fi as well, the passwords are available on the board across. Our friends who are watching across online, thank you very much. There's some questions that are coming through that we can't ignore. Okay, Felix Warren, to everyone, thank you very much. As you are talking about the online team, as you were waiting for, you was online and was waiting for the lunch coupons. Jan, do you have some? But as we move on, thanks, quite interesting. And Jen Angom, we missed you earlier on, but thanks for the opportunity, as you said, to be on this very wonderful panel discussion. I'll share some recommendations with MFA Best on my Life app. Okay. Also something coming in from Lungatsara, Johan. We are good to log in, log out, as we'll be back. Nice to see you, Paul Kirunji, almost after a decade. God is good. This comes from Munira Suwed.
Hi, Munira.
Munira still remembers. She's never forgotten.
She's a veteran like me.
Hey, that she's never forgotten. And Felix Warren, you say, how viable is online radio in terms of sustainability and poor internet coverage? I guess this goes directly directed to you, Fatboy. How viable is online radio in terms of sustainability and poor internet coverage? Felix, we are coming to that. As Felix, again, you bounce back. How do you plan to tackle unfriendly cyber laws as you operate an online radio? I guess you're inspiring someone here. How different is solution journalism from public relations journalism? I will throw that probably, you are a journalist, Paul. I will throw that back to you. Solution journalism and public relations journalism. Fatboy, the two questions are how viable is online radio in terms of sustainability and poor internet coverage? How do you plan to take unfriendly cyber laws as you operate an online radio?
Okay. Regarding the question regarding sustainability, really, like, it goes back to what I said earlier, which is treat it like any business. Do I have a market? If not, can I create one? What will it take to have an audience? Then, once I capture that audience, is there a business community that can support my endeavors, either through sponsorships, through advertising? So based on the assessment that I made for my project, I understood that there was an opportunity in form of an audience to be had. And also my radio is, it's specifically targeting an upmarket audience. And I'm not shy to say that, I'm open about it. There is a class of Ugandans that can afford data, who spend all day watching TikTok or Snapchat and YouTube or around Facebook. And so for them, data is not an issue. Most of their media consumption is online already. So there was definitely room for me to come in with my product and to compete for their attention together with the other platforms that they are already accessing and are already spending money to buy data to access. Now, the more interesting part is convincing businesses to partner with you, to advertise, to sponsor. And so the value proposition I make to them is a simple one, which is, okay, now I'm not going to claim I can have half the country listening or have 10 million or 5 million people listening, but I will attract the listeners of a certain socioeconomic background over whom I wield this degree of influence. And based on that, you can get value for your advertising dollar. You will achieve higher rates of conversion of people within this community who can be converted into your customers or can be made to spend more on your service because they fall within this socioeconomic bracket, and my product caters specifically to them. A normal terrestrial radio, and so my experience when I was in terrestrial radio was there was a desire to sort of cast a wide net. There was competition for the largest market share. You wanted to be the station that had the most listeners, and that's what you took to your advertisers. But in so doing, I found that there was a lot of compromising that had to be done with the product, to where you had to tailor your programming to appeal to as broad an audience as possible. And so what ends up happening is that as a station, you can't, your identity suffers, because what are you and who are you talking to? And so a lot of radio stations end up skewing towards what I might call omuntu wawansi type of audience, which is, the...
Fat boy, you know what that means?
That's the term I hear being thrown around.
Omuntu wawansi.
It's not a what? Basically, the common person. Is how I understand the term.
You don't know. But go on.
But you get my point.
Yes, sir.
All right? So, look, we are in this room discussing certain concepts and ideas, which, let's face it, if we went back to rural communities, people will struggle to follow what we are talking about. So there is clearly a distinction in classes of people, what appeals to them, what they understand, and what they're interested in. So the point I'm making is, by specifically using this platform, I am able to target a listenership whose tastes, interests, and aspirations I can more specifically target without having to, dilute my material to appeal to as broad an audience as, so that I'm not here saying, okay, I need to have a show that, a hairdresser might, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, you know what I mean? Or a taxi driver. Please understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And so the broader, wider general market are currently being well served by a variety of radio stations who all speak to them, okay? And their aspirations, which is good. However, there are some people who feel that they want more.
So if data is my problem, I'm not your target audience.
If what?
If data is my problem, I'm not your target audience.
You're not. And I'll be honest, just like restaurants discriminate by price. If you can't afford to pay $10,000 for a beer, then maybe this place will not welcome you. Do you know what I mean? Let's be honest about this.
That is right.
So by choosing this platform, I'm able to target this specific niche, which then I take to my clients, my advertisers, and they are interested in this section of society. Yes, they may have a more broader, the range of products might be broader and their scope of business broader, but they among companies, they do segment their clients or their customers and tailor different products to suit different customers. And so it's possible to partner with companies who may have designed a product that specifically is designed to appeal to a certain class of people, and it so happens that it could be the class of people that I target. And so now we have a common ground, and so now they're interested to work with me. So going in, I kind of had to understand that. If I was going to attempt to compete, like a terrestrial radio, to say, I'm going to endeavor to become the #1 station nationwide, to beat the bigger names in the business, that would not have been strategically viable for me, especially because mine is a small operation. But I scale based on business, based on the growth of the audience. And so that means my approach allows me to grow slowly and to spread my footprint wider. And so far, I have to say that I'm enjoying some success in doing that. So that's the approach that I have taken to make my radio viable and sustainable. And so far, we are 1 year in, and we're moving forward.
Thank you very much. There's someone who was talking about anniversaries. We are 1 year in, right? Yeah. Who was talking about that some radios, I think it was, okay, stepped out. Before you go to that, I'll ask on a yes or no. Back to you, Madam Nika. The question that Paul is also going to be answering, where there is problem-solving reporting or journalism, and then PR. Solution-based and then PR-based. Yours is more like solution-based, right? You do both. Oh.
Okay.
You do both.
We try to have 50% of stories that are sojo, but not losing sight of investigations which might have problem focus, but which also integrate solutions.
Interesting. So I will take it back to Paul so that he can just expound on the same as we proceed.
Thank you so much, Sean. There's something that I've been thinking about. It might be relevant, might not be relevant, but I thought it is good enough to share here. There's a company called Netflix. Netflix is a movie company. Right now, if I stand to be corrected, it is the top or the most valuable media company. It's a media company. And they do not sell ads. But their revenue comes from subscription. Now, going away from Netflix, there's a number of online media platforms where they used to be like traditional, but they've switched to online. One of my favorites is Harvard Business Review. The reason as to why I pay $12 every month for this platform, it's because they give me value. Okay? Now, we want to talk about solutions. The question that we need to ask ourselves is, the content that you're going to bring out, the news that you're going to cover, how is it valuable to the audience that you're taking it to? Number one. Number two, the other thing that I think media houses, I'm sure Fatboy is already there. Media houses need, when I was a journalist, there was so much that we as journalists weren't exposed to. The only thing they required you is to go to the field, write a story, and bring it. We don't know how many listeners we have. We don't know how many clicks we got. Media houses need to move to start working in collaboration with their journalists, whether in-house or freelancers. They need to know, because if they know, then they have a goal to achieve as a team, instead of each department or each player working in isolation. I mean, like, not going with a mentality of, all I have to do is to file a story and that's it for me, you know? But if media houses work in collaboration with the journalists, with people in marketing, with all other people involved, I believe we will be able, or the media or the journalists will be able to bring content that will bring value. And in bringing value, of course, it's going to bring solutions which will help people. As long as your product is solving a solution. I mean, I don't mean like you coming to the market, like let's say where there's MTN, and you say you want to be MTN's competitor, but you can't even offer a quarter of what MTN is offering, you know? So we need to, first of all, understand what the problem is, and then start finding the solutions and know what solution we are dealing with. What is it going to help impact the community that you want to serve? People, I mean, revenue will never be a problem as long as you give value. People always pay for value.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time, unfortunately. We will be creating some time, as time permits, after the next session for an open session that will cut across all subjects that we've been discussing. There's, I beg your pardon? Who has some water there? I honestly am out of time. I'm cutting out a lot of people on this. But let's hear you shout it from there.
Okay, let me just shout it from here. I wanted to comment on the difference between public relations and solution journalism. Now, public relations, when I come to you, I say, look here, this is what I am doing, and I'm proud about it. And, you know, I want to bias you to actually buy what I'm telling you without any evidence. Now, solution journalism, as a journalist, you always look at what is wrong, what is missing. But solution journalism will look at, okay, so City Council, the KCCA, is saying that low-cost housing will solve the housing problems in Kampala. But we are saying that we are analyzing this, we are bringing insights into this. We are asking for evidence, we are asking for data to show that this solution you offer is actually working. So you do not just go to say, you know, this is working. The thing is that where is the evidence? And the evidence must be both quantitative and qualitative. You need the quality of it. Do not ignore the shortcomings when you're doing social journalism. It's not about ignoring shortcomings, while the PR ignores the shortcomings of this. So you're going to investigate this method that was applied. Did it work? How did it work? How relevant was it to the society? Because did it solve the welfare problem, the bigger problem of that community? So provide evidence, provide insights, and also bring the shortcomings of that story or that topic you're covering. So that's what I want to shout about.
Hey, thank you, Barbara Monk, journalist and trainer. Brilliant. Thank you very much for supplementing on the same. Now you know the reason why I didn't take there the microphone. If I had taken there the microphone, she would still be talking. So I was like, let me not take it there so that she gets tired. But thank you very much, Barbara. Quite a brilliant one. Ladies and gentlemen, let's shout out to our panel who came through. Mr. Mpindi Abbas, thank you very much coming through from Media Challenge. Mr. Fatboy from RX Radio. I don't know whether people still call it Reckless or we keep it with RX.
Reckless in spirit.
Yeah, but
Officially RX.
thank you very much. And Paul Kirunji, Zofi Cash, thank you very much. And Anika McGuinness, thanks from InfoNile. I told you, these people, when you take their microphones, now they'll talk until, even when their microphones are not with them. Thank you, lady and gentlemen. Thank you very much. As you take your seats, we're going to be taking another session. Thank you very much. A better round of applause, please. Well, as we proceed, we are running out of time. But to all different media representatives that came through, earlier on I had an intention of reading out all your names, but I think I'll be doing that tomorrow. There is something very important that someone mentioned earlier on. I don't think it was, I believe again it was you, Barbara, that mentioned it. Did you talk about the subject of collaborative journalism? No, I think maybe it wasn't you. I beg your pardon? Ah, I was using it as an example, but it is something that I do believe we are going to be making sure that we put amidst our discussion today, as I remind you that navigating obstacles in Ugandan journalism is part of what we are discussing, most importantly. Our guests and panelists are going to be in different places, and our subject is going to rotate about the same. We will make it as interactive as possible, and more so to ensure that we can be able to beat time. I believe Mr. Behanga is going to ask me, how do you beat time? Because earlier on when I said the floor is open, he kept looking down. But it's okay, I know how to work with him. But collaborative journalism, strengthening networks across newsroom, this is a very, very important subject that I wish we had a lot of time to work with. To put up this particular discussion online, Mr. Solomon Seranja, the Executive Director, African Institute for Investigative Journalism, and also Benan Oluka, Africa Editor, Global Investigative Journalism. But more importantly, in our presence, we would like to do welcome a gentleman that I've also known for some time, and he is a representative of the national broadcasters. That is Mr. Joseph Behanga. If I may just go direct, I would request you please to take a seat. You want to stay there? Yeah, you know. And I pointed there. Please, let's welcome Mr. Joseph Behanga. You can be. He can be addressed in very many capacities. He's quite a very, very interesting gentleman. Thank you for allowing to come through. You will be using the microphone just in front of you. And the table is far away from you and you'd like to use it, I'll be grateful to share it with you. And I've been advised that actually instead we'll be having Mr. John Wasaba from the New Vision. I do believe that that information is correct, as there's been a little bit of changes in the individuals that will be joining us for this discussion. Collaborative journalism, strengthening networks across network. Mr. Solomon Seranja. Mr. Solomon Seranja. Thank you very much for allowing to give us a minute as we try to solve a technical problem here. I understand you have a few minutes, but in the presence is many specialists, journalists, and people of interest in journalism. And our subject, as you know, our theme probably that was shared with you earlier on. We go about ensuring that we navigate all the obstacles in Uganda's journalism, and you've been practicing for quite some time. The topic and subject, as I mentioned, remains collaborative journalism. Let's put some flesh to it. How do you define the... You can still hear me? How do you define this in simple terms to someone who is learning online and or more so in presence, trying to understand how this is important? Put some words to the same as we try putting some technical problems all together. If you can hear me, Solomon, let me know that you've had the question and go about it.
You can hear me now, loud and clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes. But yeah, it's good to be here, and so I'll give you a classic example of, in many of our newsrooms, we've always been working in silos. All of us have been boasting for having the very best investigative journalism, desks, in our different newsrooms. Let me give you a classic example.